So I am from Toronto. I'm legal counsel with the World Sikh Organization of Canada. I think it's appropriate to start off with a little bit of background on what this is about. Project Butterfly Effect. I didn't actually select the name. This was started in partnership with the Sikh Activist Network in Toronto. So the idea came from a young person there. And the butterfly effect is this, that a butterfly moves its wing, and just with that small action, it can create another action and another action, which becomes a whole revolution of change. Just one small thing. And so the idea is this, that all of us, even though we're just one person, and initiatives like this, even though it's on such a small scale relative to the world, it can have an effect. It can change things. So, Jaswant Singh Kalra in his speech said that I want to be that one candle that challenges the darkness. So along those same lines, this is about being that one action that might be able to promote a change, that might be able to bring about a change. So why am I doing this? That's a question that I think everyone has. The media sometimes asks the same things. Why do you talk about Punjab? You guys are in Canada. Why do you talk about Punjab? It was 25 years ago. It was a quarter century ago. Does it really matter anymore? And I think it's important to understand what we're trying to do. When someone, an individual, or a community for that matter, goes through a trauma, when something bad happens, to come to grips with what happened, it's important to talk about it. It's important to get those voices, get those stories out. But what happens is the party that did the crime, the party that did the oppression, sometimes what they want to say is, nothing happened, and if it happened such a long time ago, just forget about it. We don't want to talk about it. That nothing happened, and if it did happen, you need to grow up, you need to move on. And that's not how growth works. You need to come to grips with what happened, not just for the people that it happened to, but the people that did it. And for us as a Sikh community, a lot of those voices that went through torture, went through oppression, they haven't had their voices heard. And on the other side, those agents, those security forces, and indeed the government that oversaw those human rights abuses, they haven't come to grips with it either. They haven't dealt with it. And this presentation is about what happens when you don't deal with it. And that 1984 was 27 years ago, but why does everything that happened in that period still matter? So, most of us are familiar with, I hope, at least a little bit familiar with the period between 1984 and about 1995. There were horrific human rights abuses in Punjab. Daily, innocent young Sikhs were taken out, shot in false encounters, tortured. These pictures are just a small representation of that period. And they represent, for me, what took place. For example, you have a picture of a young man here who has the mark of a press, like an iron, on his body. You have the bodies of Sikh youth lying there essentially like garbage. You have another individual who was boiled alive. And then that picture is very symbolic. The police officer threatened to slap that young Sikh whose dasta has been taken off. But like I said, you'll hear voices that say, that happened. Punjab has moved on. Punjab is peaceful. And you guys in Canada, you're in Canada. Deal with your issues here. Don't try and raise problems for Punjabis. They're happy. Get over it. That if you do talk about it, you're an extremist. You're a radical. And my point today is going to be, no, you're not. And peace in Punjab, agreed, it's better than it was before. But the legacy of these abuses continues on. Before I move on to the next slide, Everything I talk about today, about contemporary Punjab, is either going to be from 2010 or 2011. So the so-called period of quote-unquote militancy ended in 1995. I'm not even going to talk about from 1995 until 2010, a period of 15 years. I could give you tons of examples from there as well, but to keep it relevant, I'm just keeping it for 2010 and 2011. So July 29th, 2010, people open their newspapers, and what does the story say? 5 terrorists in a different shade, with BKI, Babur Khalsa International, links nabbed. So there's a story here. The Punjab police has a press conference on July 29th, keep this date in mind, on the 29th, saying, we've arrested a group of Babur Khalsa terrorists. The leader of that cell was a French national named Balpreet Singh, and we recovered ammunition, we recovered explosives, and they're going to destabilize the state. So the layperson reading this would go, okay, that's good. You know, who wants terrorism? No one wants terrorism. But things aren't always as they appear, especially in Punjab. July 26th, 2010, 3 days before that news story, there's a Facebook page created by Balpreet Singh's family, Balpreet Singh being the French national. He actually used to live in Canada, and then he moved to France, and he still has a daughter that actually lives in Canada. So the family puts up a Facebook page saying, and if you look at the date on the bottom, July 26th, that he was picked up from his fields around 7 p.m. on the 18th of July. So the 18th of July, forget the 29th. This is posted on the 26th, but he was picked up on the 18th. And that on the page, they describe how they took his Jeep, and they've actually described elsewhere that they're apprehensive that the Jeep that they've taken might be used against him, might be used to concoct a story. So 3 days before the Punjab police are saying they've captured this group, his family is posting that our father's been picked up. Can someone help us? Things have changed since the 90s. We have social media, and the Punjab police doesn't have the same ability to cover up. This, in a normal circumstance, where you have rules, where you have the rule of law, would be a big problem. You would want to ask the police, how is it that 3 days before you are announcing an arrest, the family is saying that our family members have been picked up? No one cared. Still to this date, no one cares. It gets worse. August 6, 2010, Times of India. Small little story. You could miss this very easily. Compare it to the first story with the big headline, with the double-shaded headline. Very small story. I've actually made it bigger than it was. Cops torture suspected terrorist. So one of the 5 people they picked up at the end of July 29th they claim, but it was before that, was taken to hospital. And Kulwant Singh was his name, and he's suffering from electrical shocks. That because of the electrical shocks, he's very close to getting kidney failure. And that his stomach, the report says, I'm not making this up, you can read it right there, that he had injuries on his stomach from being beaten. And that the doctor is saying his condition is still critical and there are no signs of recovery. And they might need to put him on dialysis. So you have a suspect who's obviously been in custody, he's been electrocuted, he's been beaten. And as opposed to this being a major issue, it's a small little story. And once again, no one cares. November 7th, 2010. Well, I should finish off with Balpreet Singh. Balpreet Singh is still in prison, and they still accuse him of the most odd things. Last week, the police said they found a car with 5 kilograms of explosives. Mind you, he's been in jail for over a year. And at first the story was that the explosives were from Kashmir and they were going to be used in Delhi to blow things up for Diwali. But now they've changed the story. They say, oh, the explosives found just last week were from Balpreet Singh, and this was from his cache. Doesn't even make any logical sense. But I mean, logic unfortunately doesn't mean much in Punjab anymore. So November 7th, detonator pistol recovered on tip-off from arrested ultras. Another big story that they've arrested a group of terrorists once again, that they found detonators and firearms. And they say that, I'm not going to ask you to read the entire story. If you want it, I can send it to you later. But what they're saying is that there was a naka, which means a checkpoint, and they arrested this group of terrorists. And the group of terrorists was about to strike, and they've averted a big disaster. I want you to remember one of the names that you see in this article. His name is Ranbir Singh Khattada. He's the guy that's responsible for this arrest. I'll tell you why it's relevant later, but I'm flagging this for you now. Ranbir Singh Khattada, that he's the one that led this arrest party. This article is at least a little bit balanced. So they talked to the sister of one of the people that was arrested. They talked to the sister and she said, there was no checkpoint. They came into my house, they ransacked my house, and they arrested my brother. And my brother was my only source of my husband died and he used to support the family. So that this isn't some terrorist operation. They just came into the house, picked him up and arrested him. And that she suspects it's a data. It's like a place where a sant lives, that he's responsible for having this done. The so-called data is actually, there's a guy called Beho Vewala Saad. She accused him of being close with the police and organizing this. At any rate, she's saying that they came to my house and arrested him. Khattada at the bottom there says, I refute it. This is ridiculous. We arrested him because he was involved in terrorism. So keep that name in mind. Another case I want to talk to you about. This is just a year ago. So October 31st, 2010. Shaminder Singh Shera. He's the only Amritdhari person in his entire village. And he comes from a Hindu family. So Shera is arrested on October 31st. And he's held in custody for the next 20 days. And it's illegal custody because there's no arrest warrant. He's not presented before a judge. And his family knows that he's arrested. And they go and visit him in custody. And what happened to him in custody, I think it's really productive just to listen to it from his own voice. So I'm going to play this video and you can see what happens. He's going to talk about what it was like to be in police custody.
2 दिन इन्होंने मेरे को नहीं ना सीएस स्टाफ लगे ना वहाँ पे थाने में कुछ नहीं बोला. एक दिवाली का दिन था और एक वो विश्वकर्मा डे थी. जैसे जो ज़्यादा टॉर्चर हुआ पहले तो थोड़ा कम बेहोश हुआ मैं. उसके बाद में तो बिल्कुल खून ही नहीं था रहा. बीच में उसी वक्त में बेहोश होया था.
उन्होंने मिलाता मैनू ते जदों मैं फिर गई मैं कोई गल नहीं होर पुछी जाती ने पूछा पुत किदां तू कहंदा ठीक है. मैं कहा बेटे फिर तेनों हजे पेश पूछ भी नहीं करांदे तेनों पता कोई पेश नहीं करांदे. कहंदा ये नहीं मैनू भी पता. फिर मैं कहंदा बस ठीक हाँ. मैं उतों वापस मुड़ पई. जब उन्हें अपनी जवान किया ना बस मैं ठीक हाँ. मैं पीछे मुड़ पई. दूजी गल कोई नहीं करी.
टॉर्चर ऐसे पीछे बाहें बांधकर ऊपर टांग देते थे. सिर्फ बाहों पे जोर रहता था. वो आधा पौना घंटा नहीं जाते तो ये बिल्कुल ये चीज बिल्कुल सांस बंद हो जाता है. मतलब ऐसे तड़पता आदमी बिल्कुल. टांगे ऐसे पूरी खोल देनी. मतलब एक आदमी इधर लगा होता था एक इधर लगा था. ये नहीं अखों में पट्टी बांध देते थे.
5 तरीक ਨੂੰ ਬਲਾਚੌਰ ਆ ਗਏ ਤੇ ਬਲਾਚੌਰ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਮਿਲਿਆ ਦੀ ਹਾਲਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਨਾਜ਼ੁਕ ਸੀ. ਤੇ ਉਹ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਵੀ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ. ਬੋਲਿਆ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਬਬਰ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਨਾਲ ਅਟੈਚ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਹਥਿਆਰ ਦੱਸ ਰਹੇ ਤੇ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਟੌਰਚਰ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮੇਰੀ ਹਾਈ ਕੋਰਟ ਅਪੀਲ ਪਾ ਦਿਓ ਕਿ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਛਡਾ ਲਓ ਇੱਥੋਂ. ਨਹੀਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਰੋਜ਼ ਰਾਤ ਨੂੰ ਸੀ ਸਟਾਫ ਲੈ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ. ਜਿਹਨੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਉਰੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮਿਲਣ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਉਰੇ ਲੈ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ.
उसके बाद में करंट यहाँ पे वो करंट की 2 निप्पी यहाँ पे लगा देनी, उधर नीचे गुप्तांग में करंट लगा देना, इधर से तारना गुप्तांग में लगा देना, ये यहाँ पे लगा देना करंट। बिल्कुल जितने भी मतलब जितने भी 20 दिन रहा हूँ, बिल्कुल 2 दिन छोड़ के बाकी टोटल अल्फ नंगा रहा हूँ मैं वहाँ पे सी स्टाफ। पूरी 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 रात है, बिल्कुल एक ठंड पड़ती होनी, ऊपर से एक इन्होंने डेरोगेट करना और एक कपड़ा बदन पे कोई नहीं। ये ऊपर ऊपर के बाल इधर पटके के नीचे नीचे में जहाँ पे बाल थे ना वो सब उड़ गए, पीछे तो ऐसे पकड़ के ऐसे खींचते खींचते रहते थे।
ਜਿਹੜਾ ਖੁਦ ਕਾਨੂੰਨ ਦੇ ਰਖਵਾਲੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਗੁੰਡਾਗਰਦੀ ਢੰਗ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਕ ਬੰਦੇ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਡਨੈਪਿੰਗ ਢੰਗ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਬਾਈ ਨਾਲ ਰੱਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਆਮ ਇਨਸਾਨ ਕਿਆ ਕਰੂਗਾ।
कभी उस लड़के का नाम ले दे, कभी उसका ले दे, कभी उसका ले दे, अपने पास से नाम बताते थे कि उसका नाम ले दे, उसका नाम भी ले दे। एक वहाँ पे हमारे थोड़ी साथ में लड़का तेजा तेजा लड़का है, बोलते वो भी तेरे साथ में था, उसका भी नाम ले दे। मैं कैसे नाम ले दूँ किसी का? तो कभी किसका नाम ले दे, ऐसे तेरे आतंकवादियों के साथ में संबंध है। ये तो शर्म बोलते थे मेरे को, अगर तू मर भी गया तो क्या होगा, हम उठा के बहुत नहरें पड़ी हैं, नहर में फेंक देंगे तेरे को क्या उठा के। ये तो बिल्कुल हम बोल रहे थे वहाँ पे ये स्टाफ में बार बार कि अगर तुम मर गया कोई बात नहीं, हमारे मरने की नहीं कोई है, तू मान जा या मर जा, एक काम कर जा।
मैं सत श्री अकाल किया, उन्हें वो भी जिदा सांगे लाए होंगे इदा ही किया। बाद मैं क्या भाजी तुसी शेरे शमिंदर नो पेश करा दो, जज मोरे जेल जूल ਨੂੰ ਭੇਜ ਦੋ, 8 ਮਹੀਨਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਹਵਾਲਾ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਨੂੰ। ਉਹ ਜੀ ਟੁੱਟ ਕੇ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕਰਾਇਆ ਸੀਗਾ ਤੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਸਿਰ ਕੋਈ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ, ਜਵਾਬ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਰ ਜਾਣੀ। ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਜੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਪਾਸੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਉਦੋਂ ਲਾਇਆ, ਨਾਲੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕਰਾਉਣਾ ਸੀਗਾ, ਜਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕਿਸੇ ਪਰਚੇ ਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਤਾ ਕਿ ਨਹੀਂ ਇਹਦੇ ਪਰ ਪਰਚਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਦਿੱਤਾ, ਕੋਈ ਲੜਾਈ ਨਹੀਂ, ਕੋਈ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਕਹਾਂ ਜਿਸ ਕਾਹੇ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਫੜਿਆ ਹੈ वो भी ਇਹਦਾ ਕਸੂਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਸਿਰ ਲਾ ਕੇ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਪੇਸ਼ ਤਾਂ ਕਰਾਓ। ਉਹ ਟੁੱਟ ਕੇ ਪਿਆ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਜਾਓ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਰਪੰਚ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛ ਲਓ। ਸਰਪੰਚ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਨਹੀਂ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ, ਨਾ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਰਪੰਚ ਦੀ ਕੋਈ ਨਹੀਂ तय।
ये पता चलता था कि एक आदमी इधर है कि इधर है, और एक आदमी ऐसे पीछे वो बाजू बांध के बीच में वो गोडा रख के यहाँ पे लत फंसा के और यहाँ से बाल पकड़ के पीछे से खींचते थे। बिल्कुल एंड मरने में जैसा कर दिया। इससे तो मैं 2-4 बार तो यही बोला, मैं कहा इससे तो बढ़िया मार दो आप, ये इतना तड़फाते हैं, ये क्या काम है। अभी मेरी ये टांग की ना ये अंदर की साइड खींची हुई है, पता नहीं मांस आता है बीच में जब ये गोड्डा उतरता है या बैठता हूँ ना तो कड़क करके मतलब इतनी टांग खुलती है, उससे ज़्यादा नहीं खुलती। उसके बाद में 2-4 बार ऐसे ऐसे करके फिर टांग पूरी खुलती है।
आप देख रहे हैं शेरा की दर्दनाक।
So I hope you understood the gist of it. Kept in captivity for 20 days. So how did this get to the media? So after 20 days, the family went to meet him in captivity and they said, we don't know where he is, he ran away. And the family suspected that the police had killed him because that's what they used to do in the 90s. They used to say there was a suspect, he ran away, and really they'd take him out in the fields and shoot him. So they went to the media and said, our son has been disappeared. We know he was held in captivity, illegal captivity for 20 days, and now we can't find him. But in fact, he did manage to run away. He ran away to the state of Bihar in eastern India. He said he wanted to go to the bathroom and he managed to jump a wall and he ran away. But when he himself saw that my story is in the news, he came back. So he went in front of a judge. And he said, this is the first time I've been in front of a judge, and if you have charges, I'm willing to go to jail. But just tell me what I've done. Because up till that point, they were saying, you're linked with Babur Khalsa, name people. And this is how it works. They tell, not just with this, it's a common practice. They actually tell you to name people, and if you don't name anyone, they say, well, why don't you name so-and-so? They suggest people to name. And then the people that you name, or the people they've suggested you name, they go and arrest them. So it just keeps on going like that. The judge actually set him free and ordered the Punjab police to pay his family compensation. So this is the month of December. The judge says that he was held in illegal captivity. Punjab police has to pay compensation to the family. And on top of that, until his next court appearance, you have to provide him protection, that you will protect him. So this is only a part of the whole video. If you go on YouTube, you can see the rest. And Shera in this same interview, talks about the fact that he can recognize all the police officers that were involved. He doesn't know them by name. And he says that if nothing else, I won't rest until they're punished. He says this in this interview. So he was very determined. Like I said, the only Amritari boy in the entire family, rest of his entire village, rest of his family were Hindus. But because of all this, he took a very strong stand that I'm going to make sure these people are punished. So what happened? And remember, this is just 2010, November, December. January 2011. I'm going to let the report speak for itself.
And his brother Harvinder Singh were attacked by a group of 10 to 20 persons in Makupur village in Nawashahar district of Punjab last night. Shera and his brother suffered serious injuries and were referred to the PGI in Chandigarh by Nawashahar hospital. Shera had been illegally detained by the Punjab police and tortured. He was released by a division bench of the Punjab and Haryana High Court headed by then Chief Justice Mukul Mudgal. He was also awarded a compensation for illegal detention and torture. The court had also ordered the Punjab police to ensure his safety.
So I've skipped a slide, but I'll tell you what happened. He was attacked when he was out for a walk with his brother. He couldn't recognize the people because they were all masked, and they essentially beat his brother and they beat him worse. He died. He didn't survive the attack. So game over. Case is finished. Like I said, this isn't 1992. This is January of this year. They finished him off. And do we know about this? Imagine if this happened in Canada, that a person the police was supposed to protect, and the judge is saying you guys are supposed to take care of him and you were involved in his illegal captivity, and he himself is saying that I want to see justice happen. I want to see justice done. He's attacked by masked men and beaten to death. None of us know about it, really. And even in Punjab, no one knows about it, no one really cares about it. Nothing has become of it. Not an isolated story. I'm going to move back. The case of Sorn Singh. This is March of this year. Police say that a year ago, so not 2011, but in fact 2010, there was an attempt to create a car bomb. It didn't go off. They found explosives in a car. And a year later, they've arrested the suspect, an elderly gentleman by the name of Sorn Singh. Sorn Singh had actually been picked up in the past, during the 90s, on 2 different occasions and tortured very severely. His brother was actually killed by the Punjab police. So Sorn Singh, arrested, Khalistan Commando Force terrorist, and they're going to, find out what the whole story is about terrorism in Punjab again. A week later, Khalistan Commando Force man dies in police custody. The newspaper report actually says it died under mysterious circumstances, and the police say that he committed suicide. This is what the media is reporting. What is the family saying? The family say that when they went to see him in custody, he couldn't walk. And in fact, the whole case didn't make any sense because at the time they say he planted this bomb, he was actually bedridden. He was in an accident and his leg was shattered, so they had to put a metal plate in his leg. So he couldn't walk at the time they're saying he planted this bomb. And they say that when they went to meet him, he had marks all over his body from beatings. He couldn't walk, and there were also press marks, like, hot iron press. And he actually told his family, they're going to kill me. And the police told the family that if you guys hire a lawyer, we'll kill him and we'll throw you in jail as well. They suspected that they might go to the might go to their lawyers, go to the court, and get this guy freed. And if that happens, everyone's going to see how badly we've tortured him. So after that conversation, I think that same day, they call at night saying that, oh, in the afternoon, Sonn Singh hung himself, which is even more ridiculous because they say it's an 8-foot high ceiling, and that he took his dastar, his turban, and hung himself. Which is so stupid a story that, I mean, they couldn't take the time to find a better one. Because firstly, they didn't give him a dastar. They say that, oh, when they pointed that out, they said, no, we gave him a small dastar because he wanted to do part. He wanted to pray. So we gave him a small dastar. With such a small dastar, he hung himself, and the fact is he couldn't walk. And as a final irony, remember how I said he was actually bedridden at the time they say he planted the bomb? Because of the torture, when they went to recover the body, the plate had actually started to protrude from his skin. That's how much he had been beaten. So the plate was actually sticking out of his leg. What becomes of this? A judicial probe has been ordered into his death. I can't find anything on this judicial probe. A man has died in custody, and this is part of a pattern I'm showing you in just 2011. This is a big problem for any other country. But for a country that calls itself the world's largest democracy, doesn't matter. No one cares. So, is torture just for people that they consider terrorists? Is it really as bad as we think it is? It is. Torture has become a part of the regular toolkit the police use. Up to 1992, 1995, the Punjab police used torture. In fact, the British used torture. But because it's never been stopped, it's never been cracked down on, it's just one of those tools that they use for every single case. So if you have a theft case, they'll use it. If you have a case of corruption, they'll use it. But for some reason, it seems everyone's ignorant about it. I mean, it's like an open secret in Punjab, but no one seems to acknowledge it. But I'll give you an example of a news story. October 2010.
Let's bring you some developments from the state of Punjab. Here's a peek into the police torture and brutality in the state. A hidden camera has caught a man's back being whacked black and blue. His legs and hands were also tied before being inflicted with such third-degree torture at the Bhogpur police station in Jalandhar on Wednesday. The man was secured on charges of reported fraud, but no FIR has been registered. The police also claim that such an incident never occurred. Right, let's go across to my colleague Vishal Monga, who joins us for more details from Chandigarh on that story. Vishal, we have the video playing in front of us, and yet the police still go on to deny this entire incident.
See, the police was initially denying this whole incident, but later on, after the pressure from the media, 3 police personnel have been suspended. But this really clip shows how inhuman the Punjab police is while dealing with the cases of petty crimes. Now, what is being told by our sources that this person was booked for a small crime, and he had been brought to the police station where the ASI and the head constable are using third degree on this person, and he was in the illegal custody. He was not brought through the court, and he was beaten up very badly. And this clip has been in the public domain from last 2-3 days. And already an inquiry has been ordered by the senior officers, and 3 police personnel have been suspended. But till now, the focus of inquiry is to find out who made this clip. Not the focus is not to find out the culprits, the police personnel who had used this third degree on this person. But the police officers were very about the whole thing. They said that who was the person who shot this video, and that is the course of inquiry right now. This is once again shown us that the Punjab police, the human rights angle is really bad
Right.
in Punjab.
Right, Vishal, well, believe.
So just to stress that, the problem here wasn't that the guy was tortured, it was who the hell made the video. That's ridiculous for any democratic country, that the issue is not that these police officers are brutally torturing a guy for theft, but who made the video? Who leaked it? So the media sort of picked this story up, but just do a search on YouTube. YouTube is a very useful tool, and you'll find Punjab police torturing in this fashion is not unique. So this isn't from a news story. This is just from a YouTube clip some guy made at our Thana and decided to put on his profile. So nothing unique. These are a couple other stories that I wanted to put up. This isn't about terrorism. This is not just about the Sikh community anymore. It's about all citizens. Tahsildar alleges torture. Prakash Verma is his name, and he's saying in front of a judge, "Give me death, give me death. I prefer dying than facing such third-degree torture and humiliation," he added. "I can't tolerate the electrical shocks being given to me by the vigilance officers." He said this in front of a judge. And, I mean, I guess judges are a mixed bag, because this judge actually remanded him back to custody. Torture by cops in Rampura, Tarn. This person here, Deepak Kumar, he says that he was arrested and the police told him to sell drugs. The police are telling him to sell drugs. And when he said, "I refused," saying that I'm out of that lifestyle, I did that at one point, they beat him. And on the right is a fairly well-known picture of a so-called Nimi Jat, low caste. And the police have actually written this into his back. So it's not just about Sikhs. It's about all the people of Punjab, whether Sikhs, Hindus, Christians, Dalits, high caste, low caste, doesn't matter. Another story. I was asked to confess at gunpoint. So you have a Muslim person from the state of Bihar who comes to Punjab, police arrest him, say that, "Oh, confess that you're a Pakistani spy." The court acquits him, says there's no evidence against him, but he comes out and he says they were torturing me and they were forcing me to confess. Muslim. And finally, this is from March 29th of just this year, 3 employees of the Pepsu Road Transport Corporation have alleged third-degree torture by the staff of the Criminal Investigation Agency, Bathinda Police. So these guys are protesting. It's like a union. They're protesting for workers' rights, for the bus drivers, and even they're tortured. Torture is just, you do it to anyone you arrest. It's not a big deal anymore in Punjab. I want to talk about why. Why? Why is torture used? Why does this matter? There's a lot of why questions there. First of all, why do they keep arresting, I mean, this is going back a bit, why do they keep making these stories up of terrorists and whatnot? I can't tell you a definite answer. I mean, I can only guess. But what it seems like to me is Punjab police has certain power, certain rights, certain freedoms that the government allows it. And if the so-called specter of terrorism dies, if there's no more terrorism, then, you know, they can't be so free. They're going to get clamped down on. So it's in their interest to find a terrorist every once in a while. And secondly, why does this keep happening? It's because the people that did it were never charged, were never stopped. So essentially it becomes part of the system. Until you can deal with that, until you can deal with those excesses, those human rights abuses, they're just going to keep happening over and over again. And Canada and other democratic countries in the West are very good at it. For example, when the airborne regiment went to Somalia and tortured a Somali youth, what happened? It was a big, big issue. They, in fact, disbanded the entire airborne regiment. It means something when torture occurs, but in Punjab, India in general, it doesn't. So, in the 90s, who were responsible for killing Sikh youth? 3 names come to mind, 3 main names. One is KP Gill, Chief of Punjab Police. He oversaw the entire operations. He gave the police the powers to deal with the families of so-called militants. He gave them the ability to deal with torture. He gave them all the freedom. In fact, Jaswant Singh Khalada, we all know who Jaswant Singh Khalada is. In that story, a few days before Jaswant Singh Khalada is killed in police custody, like he was abducted and then held for over a month, about 40 days. A few days before his death, KP Gill comes and talks to him in a closed room, and Kuldeep Singh, who was the witness, who saw all this and actually testified in court, says that afterwards, the police officers, KP Gill leaves, and the police officers take Khalada out of the room, and they say to Khalada, if you just listened to what Gill Saab said, you could have saved your life. So Gill is well known. He's called the butcher of the Punjab. Sumedh Saini. Sumedh Saini, well known once again for his brutality. We've heard of Devinderpal Singh Pullar. Devinderpal Singh Pullar's best friend and his father were actually picked up and killed by Sumedh Singh Saini. Sumedh Singh Saini, well known for torture and whatnot, and in the next slide I'm just going to give you one example out of his reign of terror. And finally, Azhar Alam. Azhar Alam was a Punjab police officer who actually had a vigilante squad called the Alam Sena. And he himself used to supervise it, and they used to go out and illegally kill people. Well known. It's like, WikiLeaks? The US government actually asked their consulate to investigate if Azhar Alam is actually genuinely involved in human rights abuses. And if you just look up his name on WikiLeaks, they confirm, the consulate confirms to the government, yeah, he led something called the Alam Sena, was responsible for human rights abuses. Well-known human rights abuses. So what happened to them? What happened to them? Before that, I mentioned before that I wanted to give you one example for Sumedh Saini. This is actually a visible example. This is a police officer that served under Saini. He was a junior officer. His senior officer was Sumedh Saini. And Sumedh Saini accused him of being sympathetic to so-called terrorists. If you look at his body, this is a police officer, mind you, a police officer. His leg is cut open. His feet obviously show torture. His body has bruises, electrical marks. He was killed in a so-called encounter. Some more pictures of him. I'm only doing this, I apologize for the graphic nature of it, but just to give you an idea of what Sumedh Saini was responsible for. So where are they today? Let's start with Mr. Gill on the right. He is a well-known commentator. His face appears on cigarette packages because he's a hero. For us, he's the butcher of the Punjab. For India, he's called Super Cop. So his face appears on cigarette packages, idolized. There he is releasing a music soundtrack with Gurdas Mann. He's the head of the Indian Cricket Federation, or I don't know if he is still now. He was for a while. And hockey. And just a couple weeks ago, he was on Canadian radio. A Canadian radio station invited him on to talk about a so-called terrorist find in Punjab. Doing very well for himself. He even has a charity, actually, CHD International, registered in Hawaii. So he's doing charity work as well. He's not a pariah. He's not being held in captivity. He was actually also convicted of sexual assault. I'm just throwing that out there. Convicted, not accused, convicted. But no problem, still Super Cop idol. Sumedh Saini, he's now the head of the Vigilance Bureau. Remember that slide I gave you about the Vigilance Bureaus giving me electrical shocks, that I'd prefer death to this? He's the head of that Vigilance Bureau right now. And if you see there's a news story, a case of illegal detention, abduction, and other offenses have been registered against the Punjab Vigilance Chief. So even though there's cases registered against him for abduction and all this, he's still the chief. Doesn't matter. And there he is during the, you know, those international cricket matches that were played in Mohali, Chandigarh, Pakistan versus India, whatnot. There he is giving out prizes. So he's being given the opportunity to, you know, he's a real sportsman. He's the head of the wrestling association in Chandigarh. You just look up the wrestling association in Chandigarh, he's actually the president of it. So once again, well-respected member of society. And there you have Azhar Alam. Azhar Alam was the Vigilance Chief, Vigilance Bureau Chief before Sumedh Saini. Now what is he? He is the Akali Dal Badal's candidate for Malerkotla. So the Akali Dal Badal has said that they will be fielding him as their candidate in the upcoming elections. Well-known people for abusing human rights very grotesquely. Nothing has happened to them. In fact, the so-called Sikh party in Punjab is giving one of them, nominating him for the next elections. The root of the problem. So the culture of impunity and abuse in the security forces has just become very deep-rooted. Because these guys have not been taken to task, in fact, they've been promoted, they've been celebrated, the message is clearly, you do what you need to do, and we won't ask any questions. Same thing for the second point, that they're still in positions of power. Human Rights Watch in February of this year released a report called the Anti-Nationals. And essentially the gist of the report was, in India, if you call someone an anti-national, you can do whatever you want with them. That an easy way to abuse someone's human rights is, you arrest them and you say, this person is an anti-national. And then you can do whatever. No reaction from the population or pressure from outside to correct the problem. You need civic society to work together. You need citizens to say, this doesn't seem right to us. You need the media to be on side to say, we're going to expose this and we're not going to forget about the story a week from now. It doesn't happen in Punjab. And I'm not judging them because they've lived through a period and still are in a period where the Punjab police can do whatever they want. If you speak out against them, who knows what they might do to you. So the government itself doesn't care. I personally don't see an easy solution. And as a result, the human rights abuse is systemic in Punjab. It's just a part of the way things work in Punjab. Remember at the start, I asked you to keep a name in mind. Ranbir Singh Khattada, the guy that arrested that so-called terrorist at a Naka at a checkpoint, and his sister says, no, he jumped into our house and ransacked it and then took him away. There was a controversy in May 2010 of Indian security forces people not being granted Canadian visas. The Indian government was very upset that you're calling our security forces terrorists, that you're not giving them visas, because the consulate officials there were saying, if you're a part of the army that was deployed in Kashmir or certain parts of Punjab, it's very possible that you were involved in terrorist human rights abuses against so-called terrorists. We won't give you a visa. And one of those people that complained, Canada denied visa to Punjab cops, cited crime against humanity. Mr. Khattada wanted to come to Canada to play in a golf tournament, and he was told no. The Indian government raised such a hue and cry in the media and said that we're going to take steps against Canada, whatnot. What happened? Tories apologized to India over visa feud. That's from the Globe and Mail. So essentially, the government of Canada said, India, sorry, we'll sort this out. Instead of sticking to their guns and saying, wait, yeah, people that are involved in human rights abuses don't belong in Canada. We're not giving them visitor visas. You don't need to come play golf in Canada. They said, no, sorry, India, we apologize. Because India is a rising power, right? That's where our role comes into it. Remember at the start I said, what are we supposed to do? This is where we come into it. WSO wrote letters at that time. We met with MPs. We let them know afterwards this was not acceptable. This is where all of us have a role to play. You need to let the Canadian government know that we're not against India. I mean, India, whatever, have business ties, it's fine. But when issues like this come up, don't capitulate. Human rights are not negotiable. And Canadian Sikhs have raised voices. Compared to Sikhs in India, there are more voices in Canada that talk about human rights issues. But remember at the start I said part of that victimization is the perpetrator saying, shut up, that, get over it. And if you don't, you're the one that's wrong. I'm not wrong, you're wrong. That's what's happened to us here. Ujjwal Dosanjh, ex-MP. I'm just going to read the quote. Extremism is much more entrenched, much more sophisticated than it was in 1985. It's much more moderate in appearance than you might otherwise see. People run peaceful campaigns, and behind the peaceful campaigns is the evil designed to hurt other people and to dismember other countries. And he goes on, we now have second and third generation youth whose minds are being poisoned. You remember when he said extremism is worse 25 years after 1985 than it was back then? All of us were saying, wait a second, what are you talking about? What extremism? And so-called peaceful campaigns, even though he's acknowledging they're peaceful, even they're insidious, they're bad. You have to fear them, that's a part of extremism. That's creating that sort of rhetoric where we're not being allowed to talk about these issues in a free manner, trying to shut our voices down. That if we talk about it, we're the extremists, we're the bad guys. Happily, he was defeated in the last elections. From my perspective, I'm not speaking on behalf of WSO, from my perspective, I'm happy. And it's not just Ujjwal Dosanjh interfering. I mean, he has, he can say what he wants because he's a Canadian MP. Maybe he has something he wants to say, okay. No, it doesn't stop there. The Indian Prime Minister came in 2010. And what does he say? Saying a Sikh himself has urged Stephen Harper and at least 2 of his 3 bilateral meetings to crack down on Sikh extremists in Canada. What does that mean, crack down? What does that mean? And when our government, when our elected officials hear these sort of words, crack down, how do they reply? Do they say, we're different, we're not India, we don't do things the way you do it, or what do they say? Was there a voice that came out and said, no, there's nothing wrong happening here. We're not cracking down on anything. That was a voice we all should have heard. That's a voice we should be calling on the government to speak out on. But we don't hear it. And then he goes on, Sikh extremism, separatism, and militancy were a problem in India more than 2 decades ago. Today, Punjab is at peace, and there's growth and prosperity. There are, however, some elements outside India, including in Canada, who try to keep this issue alive for their own purposes. In many cases, such elements have links to or are themselves wedded to terrorism. So if you talk about human rights, it's peaceful, it doesn't matter. You might be wedded to terrorism. It's a serious thing if you think about it. They're telling us that we can't talk about what happened to us. Our community has suffered so much, and we're told, shut up. If you talk about it, you're wrong. You were wrong when we beat you up, and when you talk about how you were beaten up and how it was wrong, you're wrong again. What can we do? Be aware and be knowledgeable. Someone asks you about 1984. Someone asks you, but wait, isn't the Indian Prime Minister a Sikh? Isn't everything good now? Aren't Sikhs satisfied? Have the knowledge to answer. Like these things that we've talked about today, human rights abuses, most of us, even I myself before I did the research, didn't know that things are this bad. But we need to know. Engage, become part of the process. Our community, big vote bank. Whenever an election happens, everyone comes running to our Gurdwara to speak, vote for us. We need to engage further than that. We need to let our elected officials know what's happening. We need to get involved in the grassroots. One one thing, I mean, I'm in Ottawa a little bit these days. Other communities actually have members of their community who work in MPs' offices, who let the MPs know what the community's thinking, what's going on in the community. For example, the Ukrainian community has in excess of 80 interns at Parliament Hill. The Jewish community, once again, a lot of interns. Sikh community, we don't have any. We don't have an intern program. Continue to raise your voices on these issues. Don't be afraid of being labeled a terrorist if you talk about human rights abuses. Don't be afraid of being labeled a radical, because we know what we are. And I mean, it's an open challenge. If you've seen anything radical or extremist in what I've said, or what similar people working on the same issue are saying, show the world. We have nothing to hide. Support and volunteer with human rights groups, WSO, INSAF, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty. There's lots of ways you can get involved. Get involved. Like, we look to Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International. Are they talking about Sikh issues? Maybe they'd talk more if we were more involved. We need to get involved. Visit Punjab and affect change. Talking about is the one thing, going and seeing what's going on in Punjab is another. Punjab is a mess. And I've talked about human rights abuses. I haven't talked about the way that our culture, the Sikh culture, the Punjabi culture has been diluted, messed up. It was actually the Punjab police under KPS Gill that initiated so-called cultural melas. So whereas before you had in Punjab tardis, you had a certain type of song, they actually started a culture where they would get the print together and they'd bring singers who sing about the same sort of songs that we're aware of, you know, drinking, this, that, and the other. Wearing earrings in your ears. It was actually sponsored by the police. How many of us know that? Drugs. The drug problem in Punjab is overwhelming. And I told you, the Punjab police have been implicated in actually pushing drugs. Alcohol. Do you know that the Punjab government actually increased the number of alcohol refineries to be built in Punjab? As opposed to trying to decrease them, refineries are being increased, the numbers of outlets that sell alcohol are being increased. We need to know this. We need to be on the ground to understand these sort of things. And then, like I said, butterfly effect at the start. Maybe one of us can just do something that can create a bigger and bigger and bigger process. So I'm going to close off here and talk a little bit about WSO and what we're doing and how you can get involved. We have our convention coming up in Kelowna on Saturday where you can learn more. If anyone wants to go, there's a bus leaving from Singh Sabha Gurdwara, I think. You can come to me and get more information. But we talked about interns. We've actually talked to political parties in Ottawa. We're going to be announcing an intern program for Sikh youth who are interested to actually travel to Ottawa and work with MPs there in their offices. We're also going to be shortly announcing a program where we sponsor students to go work with human rights organizations in India to research. So, and if you don't want to leave Canada, you don't want to leave Vancouver, you don't want to go to Ottawa, we have internships that we can offer right where you are for credit even. Like I have students that, you know, volunteer as interns and we give them credit, or over the summer if you're a law student or you have some other skill that you think can help, we do take on interns. So there are WSO you can volunteer with, there's other organizations as well, but please do get involved. It's one thing to know about these issues, it's another thing to be actually actively engaged in making a change and making a small change. It's not going to happen overnight, but we got to start somewhere. So that's all I have to say for now, and I'm more than happy to take any questions if you have any questions. So I'll close right here. Any questions?